Well, hello. It is a steamy Tuesday afternoon in Boston, is it not?
That's one way to put it.
Yeah, that's one way to put it.
Yeah.
It is a furnace outside, so we wanted to hop in, talk some records, talk some numbers, where we're at, what it means, historical place, all that. Or you can just complain and send us some messages, and we'll try to address some of those as well, because you'd be warranted today.
Yeah, what a day we've had so far, and we'll get to all the records. We got them all lined up for you, and we just actually ticked up another degree in Boston right before we went on the air right now. So we'll get to all that, 101 in Boston, but we are under a weather alert through tomorrow. Extreme heat, again, this feels like 100 to 110 today. This is all, we're not telling you anything you don't already know. The heat advisory now has been extended through tomorrow at 7 p.m. So extreme heat warning today, heat advisory for tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes these get a little semantics based. It's hot. It's hot today. It's going to be really hot tomorrow, too. It might feel a degree or two less tomorrow, but it'll be very similar. We'll still be well up into the 90s. I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of spots maybe still touched 100 tomorrow afternoon before we start the cooling trend. And there is a cooling trend later this week. But today it is a scorcher. Haven't done this in a while. Take a look at some of those numbers. 100 in Boston, but between hours, we do get reports from the Weather Service. We can check the every 5 minutes observations, and we hit 101. So that is the hottest June day on record in the city. Records have been kept since 1872.
That's remarkable.
So it's pretty remarkable.
150 years, it has never been this hot in Boston on this in June before.
In the month of June, yeah, not just a daily record. And that number in Providence is also a record. They hit 100 degrees so far. That's a record for the month of June. I did get a question from someone on Twitter, and they said, why are these records lower for a month in June than in July and August and sometimes even September?
Valid question.
Water. Water's the answer. The ocean's still colder this time of year. It's warmer in July and August and September. So the water can always be a buffer. It can turn hot days into sea breezes. Places like Providence and Boston, they're right on the water, and they can affect those numbers. So that's why it's a little lower this time.
Speaking of the sea, Cape, a lot of spots in the Cape are over 90 today. That is pretty darn rare for June.
When I saw Martha's Vineyard in the 90s, that's the number that popped to me more than anything else today. I checked Hyannis. They've tied their monthly record, but they have a really short period of record.
Yeah.
I think we can say, though, it's number 1 or 2 for most of Cape.
There aren't many days on the Cape, not many 90-degree days in June on the Cape. Like, that's a pretty rare.
Yeah, and again, the water, because the water temperatures are still in the 60s. They'll be close to 80 in a month and a half. So there's way less moderation and less buffer the deeper into summer you go. Plus, the atmosphere in general is just a little bit hotter there.
Yeah, so dew points, actually, here's another question I got on Twitter. Dew points actually ticked down a little bit this afternoon, which is not unusual. Maybe you want to talk about why that is.
Yeah, so we have a northwest flow today. So we might expect really high dew points to linger if we were more in a southerly or southwesterly flow. You can envision that air that's coming up from the Gulf of Mexico or the Bahamas, the really humid stuff. Now, with the northwest wind, you get a little better mixing. Mixing is kind of like shaking your salad dressing up. If you think about how oil and vinegar separates in the atmosphere, if you can take the upper atmosphere or the mid-levels and mix them with the surface, you can bring some of that mid-level air down to the surface. Usually it is drier up there than down here at the surface levels. So as that day went on, we do have the offshore breeze. Dew points coming down a little bit.
I mean, every little bit helps. Every little bit helps. I mean, we were around 70 everywhere earlier, now a lot of 60s, so we'll take it. I mean, you know, certainly it's still very uncomfortable outside, and here's the current heat index, basically 1 to 110 pretty much everywhere. And again, look at that, 99 on the Cape. That's
105 in Provincetown is ridiculous.
That is insane. I mean, I can't remember the last time we saw a map like that, especially this time of year. It's just remarkable.
Yeah, it's not even, the last day of June where you're kind of sneaking in a record. I mean, we're still a week away. I'd be curious if some people were more uncomfortable yesterday than today, because the dew points topped out close to 80 yesterday.
Yeah.
It was really tropical outside. And this afternoon, it's more like that dry oven heat where that wind's hitting your face and it just feels like you walked into a bakery.
Well, it is an official heat wave, 3 days of 90 plus. That's sort of just like, we kind of knew that was coming, although in Boston it was never a certainty.
Yesterday was the question.
Yes, exactly. Yesterday was one of those days where we had the sea breeze in Boston, and we kind of knew when the sea breeze died down late afternoon, we might get that quick burst, and we did. We got to 90, barely, which, you know, it's kind of a good thing. I mean, it should be a heat wave in Boston. It really, it
with heat like
feels
this,
like it.
yes.
It would be weird if it wasn't, but even if it hadn't happened, it would have been a heat wave in most other locations anyhow. But yeah, so it is our first heat wave of the season. We had 2 last year. Probably not the last one. Who knows?
Pattern overall looks like hot summer.
Yeah.
We're going to take a step back later this week, but I think the theme of hot summer definitely hotter than last year. Although, last year we took it off the gas later in August, but it was the hottest summer on record through the first week of August last year.
Right.
So it's not like it was a cool one. We just didn't have a ton of 90-degree days strung
90s are weird. Like 2023, it was a very warm summer, but it's very humid, and I think we had maybe 5 days of 90 plus, even though it was a relatively hot and humid summer. Just a lot of rain, a lot of moisture in the air. So
all varying ways of saying it's really hot in the summer.
Exactly.
But this is exceptionally hot outside. We've got some local numbers. These aren't always totally quality control. These are a lot of backyard weather stations. So they're not perfectly situated like some of our others, but I think they give you a good idea. And this looks fairly accurate. I don't see a lot that looks funny. Winthrop at 103 seems a little suspect.
Yeah.
Maybe Swampscott at 101, but probably close. And you see those 100s or 102s, those all look pretty good. Even down toward the south coast, around 100 degrees as well, because we have that west-northwest wind. That's how you get your hot days. You cannot have an ocean element of the wind direction to get to numbers like these.
In fact,
it has to be coming off.
Little known fact, I believe, and I don't think this has changed, that the hottest day ever recorded in Massachusetts was in New Bedford.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Yes. If you go up to like the NOAA NCEI webpage and look up the state record, New Bedford is the record
Which you would never guess that New Bedford would have that.
If you gave me any town in Massachusetts to guess, I wouldn't be my first 20.
I think it was 107 or 108. But at any rate, yeah, you would not guess that. But it would had to have happened on a day like today with a wind direction like that.
Yeah, look kind of like a cold front coming down from the north, kind of compressing and squeezing that wind so that it turns like due west at the last minute, and that's how you blow that land wind right into those coastal locations.
So there you have it. Those are Worcester also has hit a record today at 95. Of course, Worcester always about 5 degrees cooler, given that it's 1,000 feet up where we're measuring, but down at the actual, I would say surface, but where a lot of folks are living in Worcester. Sea level in Worcester.
More or less.
Probably was closer to 100 degrees there, but nonetheless, an easy record. I think you were saying late last week, easy record to shatter today. It was sort of never in question. The record, it was more of...
The monthly record was the question.
The monthly record. Do we get 100? Do we get that monthly record? And of course we did. We broke it. So
then the all-time number is 104 in Boston. So we'll see if we get to maybe 102 today. I'd be surprised if we could get higher than 102. We might have another degree left. Usually this time of year, our highs happen between about 4 and 4:30 most standard days.
Would be pretty remarkable if we were able to hit, and I don't think we're getting 104 today, but if we were able to do it in June, that would be quite a feat.
Yes.
I think it was July 4th in 1911 when we had the other 104. Anyway, so today was the 28th day of 100 plus in Boston, and that, again, is about 150 years of record keeping, so one every 6 years or so on average.
Yeah, and sometimes they come in streaks. Sometimes you get 2 or 3 in a year, and then none for 15, 20 years almost in a row. But our last time was in 2022, and in June, I should say, 2021, which was also the last time that we had 100 in June.
Right, correct. And here's I just picked like the last 5 years, just looking at how does this compare to recent times. This is the hottest temperature of the last 5. It's actually the last time we were 101, I believe, was 2011. So this would be the hottest day since then. And now we're not talking about just June now, we're talking hottest days last 5 years. Today tops that list. A couple of hundreds in there like you were just talking about. But hottest June days on record again, today at the top.
Number 1.
Surpassed 2021 and a couple other years that were at 100. So, here we...
And another thing to point out, when people are dealing with heat-related illness, when we get into a stretch like this, a lot of it is because the nights and not necessarily the days. Because during the day, you might be able to, go to the pool or sit in a kind of shady area. You could go to a cooling center, or a library, or a community center.
That's a good point, yeah.
At night, tonight's low is probably going to stay above 80 in Boston, or right around 80. So your body doesn't have a chance to cool off if you don't have air conditioning.
Yeah.
Now, these days, a lot of people do have air conditioning. I think the number's up to 85, 90% that at least have a window unit, if not central air. But there are still people who don't. And so this is where you want to be extra careful, check on people who might not have it, and take care of yourself, because it can beat up on your body, no question. That 1911 heat wave that Terry mentioned, which is the all-time record high in Boston, is actually the deadliest natural disaster in New England history.
Is that right?
A heat wave.
Oh, no kidding.
It's not a hurricane or a tornado.
That's fascinating. I did not know that. Wow, that's a good one.
No air conditioning. They basically had blocks of ice from an ice factory, basically, that they could stand around, you go lick the ice cube, whatever.
And no warning. It's not like people were telling them a day ahead, like, hey, this is coming either. So that's fascinating. Wow. And of course the pets too. Don't forget the pets can get very hot. We were talking this morning in the morning meeting. There were a couple instances of people leaving the pets in the cars.
Ooh,
and
no. Yeah.
That's a big no-no on a day like today. I guess there are some cars now that actually have pet control. Some of the newer cars, actually, there's a pet mode, and it automatically cools down while you're away. But I don't know. Is it really? Do you really need to put the pet in the car?
Would you do it to your kid?
Today? Exactly.
I wouldn't. So I wouldn't do it to the dog either.
Agreed.
Whatever else might be in the car.
So here's our 90-degree days over the last 10 years. Of course, we're just getting into it. We're at 4 so far today. You see that 2023, where we only hit 5, despite being a fairly muggy, warm summer. If you had to guess, and I go, no, this is 90s are very. It's who knows.
This is the old Barry Burbank game.
Exactly. Yes. If you had to guess where we end up this summer, give me a range.
This summer, I'm going 24.
Okay.
I think this is going to be up there compared to recent summers. Actually, I'm getting a vibe similar to 2021.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that we don't get the rain amounts that we saw in July of 2021. That was a summer. I know not everyone's a huge weather nerd like we are and remembers all these, but that was a year where it got really hot in June. We had a day like today. It poured in July, but every time it wasn't raining, it was scorching hot.
Yeah.
So hopefully not that hot, but I do feel like we're going to be high on the scale. What would you say?
I was going to say somewhere between 15 and 20, but I can certainly see, I don't know. Boston's weird.
Compared to other
places. I feel like
places.
if you were asking me like 10 miles inland, sure, like Boston can have days, sea breeze days are just wacky days where it just doesn't get there. But
we talk about that a lot. Boston's temperatures are measured at Logan Airport. The thermometer is basically sitting in the ocean. It's right on the edge of the water. If there's any sort of sea breeze.
A puff of anything happening in the ocean.
Even if it's a 200-foot deep sea breeze, it's going to cool off Logan Airport. The city can be much higher than what we see there.
You had just mentioned how it was really no relief going on at night, and of course today we'll have another record high minimum temperature. It was 78 this morning for a low, and we certainly aren't going below that the rest of the day. So 2 straight days where temperatures in Boston haven't gotten below 76, 70 degrees. So there's just there's no way to cool off. In fact, Jacob Wyckoff today spent part of the day, and he broadcast live at noon from the Frog Pond, where today was, imagine opening day for the Frog Pond, and it's the warmest June day ever.
They moved it up, didn't they? Because I think the initial date was the 27th.
That sounds right.
So that makes sense. I'm glad they saw the forecast and they're like, you know what, we gotta get going.
Let's go. So let's see if we can get a little bit of report here from Jacob, who was live with all the. Believe me, it was packed at noon there today, Jacob.
The sounds of summer have officially arrived here in the heart of Boston. Hundreds of families have arrived here at the Boston Common for the official opening of the Frog Pond Spray Pool, where tons of kids are having fun, right? Yeah! So this is a sign that summer has truly arrived. In fact, I had a chance to speak to Mayor Michelle Wu about what this means to the city.
The first splash of the year is always a moment for so many smiles all across the city, and really here at the Frog Pond it's become a very special tradition. But we also know as the summer's getting hotter and hotter, it's not only nice and fun, it's necessary. We know that families really need places to stay cool, and to be able to provide that in the neighborhoods with spray features, little fountains, splash pads, it makes a big difference for families knowing that Boston is livable.
The Frog Pond is open daily starting at 11 o'clock for the entire season. It is importantly free, so come on down and cool off on some of the hottest days of the year. Here at the Frog Pond, I'm meteorologist Jacob Wyckoff, WBC News.
Looks like Jacob had a costume change, because if you were watching at noon, at the end of his hit, there were a whole bunch of kids splashing him and he was soaked. So it looks like he brought a change of clothes.
That's great.
Let's look forward now a little bit. Obviously, we've given you all the records, starting with tonight. Again, another very mild, warm night. No relief coming just yet.
At 78 is kind of the average high this time of year in Boston. Yeah. And I would go probably 81.
I was going to say, that's probably conservative for tonight. Yeah.
And then tomorrow, we're talking about another really hot day outside. So. So look at some of the forecast highs. A lot of 90s still on the board, so we're going to be adding that heat wave.
Yeah, and again, these numbers may also be a bit conservative. As you said, I wouldn't be shocked to see a couple hundreds tomorrow somewhere inland.
I'm going to go in and do my usual tweaking on all the maps here. So basically, there are a lot of these maps inside baseball. If you're watching on the stream or you're watching on YouTube, all of these can be just totally automated. There's basically model forecasts that go in, all these numbers, everything you see. And then when we come in the afternoon, in the morning, whatever the case may be, we go in and we start editing them, because the human can still beat the computer a lot of the time. I haven't gotten to this one yet, but I think I'm probably going to be jumping a couple of those.
Pumping that up a little bit. Boston, a little bit trickier tomorrow.
Yeah. So we do expect the breeze to turn on shore tomorrow afternoon.
Right.
So in the afternoon we'll get some relief.
Maybe. I wouldn't be shocked if Boston hit 90 before that happened.
Yes.
Certainly not impossible.
Especially when you start the day at 80, 81.
It's a good launching pad.
2
Absolutely.
hours and you're there.
Right, yeah. But big changes ahead, though, and we'll get into this a little bit more in a second, but a much different finish to the week than start to the week, temperature-wise, cloud-wise, and I don't think there's any day that I would pinpoint as a washout coming up.
No.
But certainly a chance of showers kind of each day.
Yeah, tomorrow we'll, as that sea breeze boundary comes in, we're going to see a couple thunderstorms fire up on it. So especially for inland areas, I think probably off Cape, off coastline will be the best chance tomorrow. Thursday, some scattered stuff around, maybe a couple of showers or some areas of rainfall, but you can see the hour by hour here. Watch a couple of those thunderstorms trying to pop up in the afternoon. Not going to be terribly widespread, but a few will get to enjoy that rainfall. It's actually getting really dry. Spent all May talking about the rainfall, and June's been the driest month of the year so far. Then Thursday, this is the day. The breeze is on shore. It's a lot cooler. It is cloudier. Some rain around, but it's not going to be raining all day.
Interestingly enough, a lot of folks are have said, are assuming we're going to get some major severe weather to kind of break the heat, and it's really not going to happen. It's sort of if you want to say, a quiet end to the heat, so to speak. A lot of times, I want to say back in June, when we hit 100 in June last time, we had some tornado warnings go on that very same day.
Oh, that sounds right.
I know I'm getting you on the spot here, but it's something that's clicking in my head. I could be wrong on that, but I mean, certainly you wouldn't be surprised if to break a heat streak like this to get some sort of major weather, but really not a lot. Like you said, a couple pop-ups tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that the big thing here is that we get kind of a high pressure rolling over the top, so it swings in the onshore breeze, and that's how we cool off. Instead of a cold front swooping in from the west, you get more upper level energy to create those thunderstorms. That's not how we're cooling off this time.
Yeah.
It's all about ocean flow versus just Canadian air.
And you see just sort of a couple rounds of showers. Again, probably nothing severe. Certainly on Thursday, we're on a much cooler air, we have a much cooler, different feel in the air mass. And then maybe even on early Friday morning, kind of Houston. Now the weekend, it's a little early, and I know you haven't digested all the afternoon models yet. We literally drew them right in.
Came in on 2 wheels and started talking.
But again, I think the long and short of it is certainly nowhere, it's not going to be a sunny, bright weekend, but I don't expect any washouts either. Some of the models a little more pessimistic on Saturday than others. Sunday looking probably like the better day.
Yeah. Saturday at the moment I didn't see washout signal. I saw some storms around maybe. And Sunday looks like a pretty nice day at the moment, so we'll see how it trends here. It is still Tuesday. We got a lot of weather in between here.
Yes.
Summer weekends start to get really important, or they really have started to get really important.
No doubt about it. A lot of parties, a lot of graduations, a lot of stuff. So actually, let's end this. I had a couple questions to throw at you.
Yeah.
And one you sort of already answered in a way, but is this going to be the start of a hot summer pattern? And I know you already alluded to that, but
I think overall, I think it's going to be a hotter than average summer, which for the most part is a slam dunk these days. We had one cooler than average summer, just a couple, was it last year or 2 years ago?
It
2 years
was.
ago.
Well, 2 years ago was the humid, warm 2023.
Definitely wasn't last summer, so it must have been 2023.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We actually pulled one off. That was the first one in a decade. So maybe another 10 years we'll have one, but
exactly, yeah.
We never lean that way at this point. Obviously, as the climate warms up, it's just easier to hit these warmer seasons than average.
Right.
But yeah, I'm feeling hot summer this year, especially after the kind of slower start in May and June where we didn't have a lot of big heat days. That basically just averages out somewhere.
Yeah, and just over the next 1 to 2 weeks, I think that there is a chance that we'll warm up again, maybe early next week. There's exactly.
Back and forth play.
I don't see it necessarily 100 degrees in the forecast, but I certainly think we could hit 90 at some point early next week.
Yeah, that sounds
But overall, this is the next 1 to 2 weeks. There's no huge signal one way or another, but I do think we'll probably, like you said, a little bit up and down.
Yeah.
Another popular question: what determines whether Boston and the beaches enjoy a sea breeze like yesterday versus a day like today? Is it? Well, I'll leave it. I'll throw it to you.
It's about pressure gradient, basically. So if you have a tighter gradient that produces wind, a gradient is a change over a distance. So if the pressure is a little higher in one place, a little lower in another place, you can get that gradient and you can force the wind along it. If there isn't a good gradient, then the wind is going to respond to temperature instead. So we get what's called a thermal wind. And usually wind is going to blow from cold to warm. So if the ocean's cooler and the land is warmer, you generate different pressure cells that way. You get high pressure over the water and you get low pressure over the land because that water, the air is sinking down, and land, the air is rising because it's heating. So then that air, if you can envision from the water, comes in to replace it and then starts rising. So if you don't have a good gradient, as in a cold front coming through, something like that, then the wind will always turn in off the water. And today we just have enough of that gradient to push it more from the west. Usually my estimate is around, you need 10 to 12 miles per hour of offshore wind. And if you don't have that much, it's going to turn.
And that's pretty much what we have. I think it's just 12 miles an hour right now.
On the dot.
We're right there today, yeah.
It's just enough.
Just enough to prevent that sea breeze from happening. And one final question, which was probably the most common, will the 100-degree days become more common in Boston with climate change and how things are trending?
I think it's a tricky call. It's actually, I think, a little harder to get these hot days now than in the past for a couple of reasons. One is that our atmosphere is more humid, and anyone who's lived through summer in the last 30 years here knows it doesn't feel like it did 30 years ago. We still had hot days, but the humidity has become such a bigger factor. Two reasons for that is just a warmer atmosphere can hold more water, and our oceans are getting warmer. So both are sources that contribute to our rising dew points. If it's going to be really hot outside and it's really humid, a lot of the sun's energy goes into evaporating that excess moisture. That's why Florida doesn't see 100-degree temperatures in the summertime, even though it's near the equator. It's much more humid outside. So that's one reason that we don't see necessarily a big uptick in these hottest of hot days. The other reason is land use. So if you think about if you have an area that's very arid and doesn't have a lot of trees, that's going to warm up really easily and it's going to cool off really easily, more of a desert environment. Boston and New England is actually much more forested now than 100 years ago. If you think about 100, 150 years ago, we had a lot of clear cutting for farming, more pasture land, things of that nature. And so that will also contribute to hotter temperatures. When you have more trees, you have more albedo, I should say. Basically, trees can reflect some of that sunlight back into space. They also breathe more. That's called evapotranspiration, so that can add more humidity too. And that can also change our hottest of hot days. Yeah. So even though our averages keep moving up, we're seeing it more in the lows than the highs. Maybe we're getting more days in the 80s and the 90s, but these 100-degree days are still pretty rare, and there hasn't really been a big uptick in the number that we've been seeing.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like the nighttime lows are warming at a greater rate than the daytime highs. And again, that's just a sign of all that water vapor, all that moisture in the air. So good stuff. If you are watching on YouTube, we'd ask you to like and subscribe. If you didn't like the weather, you can at least like the folks that are delivering it. And Eric is going to go back in the weather office and start crunching all the numbers and have the very latest coming up at 5.
Yeah, of course. We'll be on, as we are every day, 5 to 6:30, 8 to 9, 11 to 11:30, and always streaming on CBS News Boston. If you need an update, we are here for you.